All right, thanks for introducing me, and I'm really happy to be able to work and continue this talking about this happy initiative and all these magnificent things that we've been using. So I would say that this is pretty much lessons and learning style of presentation and not that much of tutorial how to preserve databases because that's pretty much another topic. So that's about me. Let's start about current situation in Finland is not that easy anyway, but that's something that we are in several months ago. But I've been working in National Archives since 2004, and of course in e-archiving context much later than that. But anyway, when I came to archives, my task and also challenge was to be able to so-called, I would say, missing link between archive and digital data, digital context, digital world, and trying to find solutions to this kind of archival purposes. And a lot has happened since, and digitalization is now, I would say, internal part of our profession, everyday life, and so all the discussions and are related to how to handle digitalization and digital data, and of course, some of the challenges have disappeared, but also new ones came, and one of those big topics which has been in discussion in our community has been those databases and structured data and complex data items. Because when we create solutions, there's always some digital environment which creates some new problems and new topics to challenge. So, but then we realized that okay, we have to have a bigger community so we can work. Otherwise, we are pretty much alone, and it's quite impossible to create anything. I would say sustainable solutions if you are doing without good resources. So, this presentation is pretty much how we did and slightly from personal viewpoint through a development to archives and so thinking how database preservation practices have been evolving in archival community here in Finland and so let's learn and I think how digital solutions and e-archiving I'd say came to Finland. All right. Let's start a little bit from a challenge. When we started and realized that, okay, there are databases somewhere there and which have data which should be preserved. So our background was in records management and file formats. So digital preservation was considered quite much technical issue, not so much connected to information governance as today. So databases were a different issue because content was not in, I'd say in many cases, possible to understand when you have data and you read it. So even if you could open the file, you couldn't use it because you couldn't understand and you couldn't connect and so data itself has some things that had to be handled. So previous methods were not, I would say, sufficient in this way. So reality was there were huge amount of old databases to be saved from 70s, 60s, and so. And there were been huge projects to handle those data sets in those databases, to convert to some formats and to extract those out there. And some projects lasted more than 1 year and cost huge amount of money because systems were going to be shut down, and data has some importance, but there were no tools to make something. So we slowly raised our understanding of the problem, and we understand the needs. So there was sort of gap. We needed some tools, and we tested ADDML method using CSV, XML, and so. But each of those were pretty tricky, and because there were no ready tools, you could just plug in and use. Very tricky. Solution was missing. And I'd say that we are now climbing of those levels of maturity model, as Dirk has explained, and those have been very useful. And I would say that we are one of those countries which are missing from the map, because we are pretty much using this as an internal benchmarking tool and learning using this kind of material. So we understand situation and the problem. So that's a good learning start point. So why we are doing this. So we evaluated different approaches. Visited Switzerland and learned about eArch. And of course, when you had tool, we tested. And I have a software development background. I tested internally. So we realized, okay, this is something. This is really something that is worth visiting. But eArch as a file, which was, I would say, the starting point for our concept. It was, okay, we have a file, but we needed much more structures around it. So then we managed to work with this eArch project and working in these case studies and all these definitions which has been created in eArch project about how to describe, how to make those preservation packages, and how to make those shared packages actually to be archived. And those case study lessons really opened our mind that, okay, this is how different countries are doing, and Denmark, Estonia, Norway, Switzerland, I would say same-minded professionals work together and see that, okay, you are doing this way and we are doing that way, so we could learn from each other. So that was, I would say, one of the key benefits. So we learned from each other and not, I would say, paying money for external consultants, but then we starting really learning in this doing process. And then we tested and learned, and now a final position is that we have now this shared style in, I would say, production environment, and so it's in reality that now we have a solution and not that much tricky so-called of solutions anymore. And a little bit about those case studies which are available, of course, internet. So with Estonia, Norway, Denmark, Switzerland, and of course here in Finland. So each country had a slightly different way of doing things, but huge amount of similarities. I would say the setup for this discussion that each country is so different comparing to another, so we couldn't have any joint systems. But when we really started to benchmarking and comparing that, okay, we are doing actually same things, minor differences, but then we learned and changed topics, and okay, we wrote these case studies which are focusing about appraisal, methods, principles, pre-delivery, ingest, validation, and a little bit also about access. Most topics are about this, I would say, ingesting, validation, and how these e-archiving methods, structures can be used and validating those. And realized, okay, this is a learning process. So very handy tutorial what to do. And it focused that the main emphasis was about how to create good documentation. What kind of structures are needed when documentation is created, and what you should actually document. Contextual, context, and then usability, and then what kind of formats you could use. So one of the key challenges we tested was to preserve our own, or really our own National Archives' own archival database, so cataloging database, which was getting old, rebuilt, new one. So there's huge data in DB2 database, and I would say software obsolete, and an infrastructure just about to collapse, but data was very valuable. So we tested and noticed it's very difficult to extract data from this system. But we are using database preservation toolkit, the whole thing, which seemed quite impossible. It took less than 2 hours to capture data, and then we built a new Postgres database for, I would say, in case of we need some data from it. All those things happened in one day. So it was sort of magic that this kind of things are possible using those tools. So I would say learning, doing, testing. So what we got? Some topics, of course, there's a huge amount of documents and huge amount of practices, things you could check. But I'd say that networking and best practices and cooperation was key point. So a network of database preservation professionals was the benefit. And getting real hands-on experience with organizations at the same position and same attitude and same challenge and same, I'd say, professional background. Of course, there's a quick possibility to have some external consultancy, but then those learning process is neglected. So we wanted to work and wanted to do, and some parts, of course, when we're using open source software, ready to use, ready to repeat, hacking in those databases, hacking to doing things, and testing those ideas and providing, use those, open those, install it, and do things. And then we had one tool to handle almost everything, not everything, but almost everything. So then we are focusing about one tool, then we can build more I would say, sophisticated systems and build our infrastructure around this shared file. At the moment, I would say that we are not 100% e-archiving compliant. Reason for this is that we started to build our systems and definitions and structures earlier than those were available from eArch. But now we are working to make those changes and working to that direction, that all those package structures, sits files and so would be compliant. But it takes some years, but anyway, so direction is pretty clear. But even though we are not 100% compliant, we can use those I'd say ideas, principles, tools, and very modular way. So you can choose and part and use as a toolkit, and then raise your level of understanding and raise your skills. That's what I would say, as your own pace and own needs. And the solution is that, okay, we are now doing things using e-archiving methods, structures, and collecting databases. So I would say one problem is much, much, much smaller than it was several years ago. So thank you for listening to me, and I suppose now it's time for the question and answer session.